Another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, Jacob from Jackpot Boxing. What's going on, lady and gent?
Hey, the
Hello.
holiday season is here.
Indeed. I hope everybody who's listening, everybody who's watching us live, I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. Hope you got your full complement of Thanksgiving food, the turkey, the dressing, the rice, and everything in between, your sweets, your desserts, and all that other good stuff. Um, This is episode 274, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out more information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, please check out the blog page, P4P Boxing Report. .wordpress.com. That's the link. You check the top right of the blog page. You will see the links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us on most platforms that carry RSS feed, where to check out, where you can donate to the show. Got a Cash Me PayPal. Got links to a Cash Me PayPal donations there. Let donation be the best nation. I know it's a holiday season. I know people are shopping a lot on both Black Friday and Cyber Monday. If you have a little spare change left over, please donate to the Pound for Pound Box Report. I don't care how much it is. $1, $2, $5, or if you got a little bit more in your wallets, purses, please do. Please donate to the Pound for Pound Box Report. Most things are not free, including the production of this podcast. And last but certainly not least, got a link to my fitness coaching page. I am an online coach for Beachbody .com. If you're interested in any fitness challenges, any products on Beachbody programs like P90X, like Insanity, like 6 Weeks to the Work, new program that has launched on Beachbody, or any of the supplements like Shakeology or the Recovery or the Energize, stuff like that, just hit up my online coaching page on Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. Let's get things going. Recapping things that went down this weekend. Um, I want to start. I want to start in the UK, Gail. Birmingham, England, to be specific. We talked about on the last episode. We talked about the return of Zolani Tete. Tete defending his WBO bantamweight title against John Rayo Casimiro. Tete, first time in the ring in 13 months. Yeah, 13 months. Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. Uh, I named this particular episode WTH, What the Hell, because, yeah, what the hell, Gail? One of the upsets of the year, Casimiro beat Tete. Didn't just beat him, stopped him in the third round. Triple shot, discombobulated Tete. He never recovered. Casimiro pounced, and just like that, the fight was over.
Just like that.
Shocking result.
Casimiro came to play. He was not intimidated. He didn't waste a whole lot of time with feeling out. He went right down to business. He got business done, and business was good. He fought very smart, very economically. Tete had one of those nights where he just seemed off. Is he rusty? Is he on the decline already? Let us hope not. Was it a fluke? It's very hard to tell with a fight like that. But all due credit to Casimiro. He was definitely an underdog, but he has skills. He had talent. He put them all to work, and boom, boom, we're done. And I know that end of that fight launched me straight out of my seat. I couldn't believe it. As pleased and happy as I was for Casimiro, it's a crushing defeat for Tete. It really is. He didn't have a whole lot to say. Hopefully he's going to go back with his team, look at the fight, see what happened, have an honest conversation with himself, figure out what happens from here.
I'll go to you, Jacob. Was discussing this fight on a Skype with past guest Gus from Corruption and Boxing. He has made the argument that there's been, if we take an honest look at Tete, there's been kind of a precipitous drop in terms of his performance for a couple of years now. I use that to ask this question. Do you believe that is the case, or do you believe that is the case? This fight was the result of that with Tete? Do you think that the result isn't technically what three division champion now, or is it a case of Casemiro just catching Tete with one of those vulnerable shots that fighters have a hard time recovering from?
I mean, honestly, I think it's a little bit of everything, almost like a perfect storm. On the last show, we talked about, Tete being out for that long of time for an injury, so my whole thing was, how was he going to look? Gus is right. He hasn't looked that spectacular lately. He's had some solid wins, and he's had that record-setting win where I think he knocked the guy out in like 13 seconds with like just one punch. And as spectacular as that is, it doesn't really, tell you the story of a fight, or how a fighter, how good a fighter is, because they don't really get a chance to even, display their skills, and go through opposition and adversity. But the punch that landed, and the follow up punch was kind of a weird punch. It landed, I think, right near the ear, like slightly above the ear, and which is equilibrium spot. So I don't care who you are, if you land in that certain spot, it can throw you off. I mean, like we were talking about earlier before the show, Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz, Ruiz landed on his ear and threw his equilibrium off, and changed completely changed the heavyweight division in his life. And then the other things with Tete is that he he actually, he was part of this World Boxing Super Series. A lot of people had picked him to face, to in the finals to face Inoue, and I think he even said after the Danier fight Inoue, he's like, he wanted that fight with Inoue still. So I don't know, maybe his focus wasn't all there too. It's like, it's never a good idea to look past your opponent. Casimir is, he's a credible guy. Like you said, it is a champion in three divisions now. He's promoted by Manny Pacquiao, I believe. The Filipino, boxers, they're good. They're good fighters, So um, I actually thought that Tete was going to lose if he fought Danier, which is another Filipino fighter. But Tete, what I noticed is that he doesn't use, or he didn't, he's not, he wasn't aggressive, and he wasn't using his length and his, I mean, he's way taller and way lengthier than, most of the people he faces. And I don't know, he just doesn't use his attributes. He kind of reminds me of, what's his face? Easter Jr. in a sense, where another tall guy that doesn't use his best weapons, and maybe isn't aggressive enough to keep someone on the end of their punches. And so when you don't do those things, you leave openings for your opponent to exploit, and give him a chance. So I kind of think that's a little bit of what happened, along with the other stuff I said.
I'm going to go to both of you before we move on to talk other fights. Future here, for both men, uh, for Tete and for Casemiro. Your thoughts? Casemiro, after the fight, immediately called for a fight against Inoue. Uh, Inoue took to Twitter and said, "Yeah, I'm interested in that fight." And then earlier today, he attended a card to watch his cousin, Koki Inoue. I believe that's his name. I may get his first name wrong, but in short, he watched his cousin at a card in Japan, and he talked to the media, and he reiterated that not only is he interested in a fight with Casemiro, he wants to fight Casemiro next. His top ranked debut, spring 2020. So, given that backdrop, do you think we will see that? And what do you prescribe in terms of how Tete should come back, how he should rebuild his career following this devastating defeat? First you, Gil, and then you, Jacob.
Let's start with Casemiro. His stock has never been higher. And, Inui's coming off a very, very rough fight. This is going to be an interesting call. I would love to see this fight. It's the right fight for Casemiro. He might as well try to grab Inui, after he's just been through hell thanks to Nonito Donaire. The timing's right for him. Is it right for Inui? Not sure. Might be a little too rough and tumble of a fight for him at this point. To test the cuts, to test, his mindset. He might need a little easier ride first, but if I'm Casemiro, I'm pressing hard for it. Now maybe we arrange a card where Inui's in the main event, Casemiro's in the co-main. They fight other guys, they both win. It tees up another fight. Neither of them generally sits out too long, so I think that is practical. Although I think we'd all like to see them face to face next. Tete really needs to think about where he's going. Is he in the right weight division? Is he needing?
And that's a good point, Gail. Excuse me for asking, because Tete 16 and a quarter, 16 and a half, 16 and three quarters. That's really, really light.
Very.
Maybe he should go back down to 115 pounds.
I think that is something he absolutely needs to consider. Now, we all don't know how hard he has to work to get down that far, but if he made it, if he's just a pound or two above, I would think that if he planned well, if he got a little nutritional help, he could do it. And I think he'd fare a whole lot better. He really hasn't had to worry a whole lot up until now, but it's regrouping time, and the decision about, which weight division he wants to pursue will make a big difference. He needs a tune-up fight for sure. Shouldn't go too crazy. And he has time. It was a bad loss, but still, it's a single loss. What is vital is to keep his confidence up, to not let it deteriorate, to not let him have doubts creep in. That's where guys really start going downhill fast. Every fight is lost or won in the mind first.
Your thoughts on the future for both men, Jacob?
I agree with Gail in this with Casemiro in the sense that he saw what an older version of Nonito Donier did with Inoue, and it was a rough fight, and Inoue did get hurt in that fight, and so he took no damage in this fight. So it's strategically, he's a younger. I'm not saying he's the copy of a Nonito Donier, but he's a definitely a younger, more spry version of a fighter. So this might be the time to pounce. Strike while the iron's hot. He has that chance that he can, and again, like Gail was saying before, a lot of boxing is mental. So if you have that belief in yourself, like we talked about Deontay Wilder and his giant punch, and his how his belief just gets bigger and bigger, as these guys win these big fights, and especially when they're underdogs in devastating ways, like he did, like Casemiro did, then you kind of have that belief that hey, I can do this. And I've seen this guy get hurt. I've seen this guy get go through adversity. So I'm gonna take it to him, and let's see what happens. So I got to respect someone that is looking for the biggest challenges, and has that much belief. I wouldn't pick him to win, but I mean it would be an interesting fight, and it could be like we said, depending on when it happens and how Inoue has, after that rough fight, it could be the perfect, another perfect storm. With Tete, I don't think that I'm not necessarily thinking that he needs to drop down, but I think he needs to. I think he needs to change up his style a little bit. Again, if he's gonna stay at this weight, like I think he needs to. I don't know if he needs to change camps or what it is, but he just doesn't seem like he's, like I said before, he's not using his attributes in the right way, in my opinion, and he's not being aggressive with that. So there was little action in this fight until that punch landed. Um, and I think he has shown before where he has the skills and the power and the ability to do good things, but if he's kind of coasting, then that's kind of the worst case scenario, I think. So hopefully he'll right the ship and get his mind straight. And I do think that, like Gail said, he needs a tune-up fight to kind of see where he is. And like I don't know how much the shoulder played into it too. Like hey, was he tight, and is he like most fighters don't go in 100%, but especially when you have a long layoff and an injury like that, to one of the to your shoulder, which is connected to your arm, and that's part of boxing. That it could do some things to you. So I think he needs to get his confidence back with a win, get some rounds in, work himself out a little bit, and then build himself back up.
I'm going to go on to some other fights here. Uh, Tete Casemiro took place in Birmingham, England. I'll talk about another fight that took place on the same day. This one took place in Monte Carlo. Cecilia Braca's unifying undisputed welterweight champion. Uh, Her first fight with DAZN, fight Victoria Bustos, won by easy decision. Um, I was at work, so I wasn't able to see this fight live and have not been able to see enough of it to give a full assessment. So I'm gonna rely on Jacob and Gail to give the breakdown for this fight. Whoever saw it, your thoughts, please.
I did see it. I would not miss an opportunity to see who is arguably still the first lady of boxing. However, Cecilia Brækhus's career is starting to come to that point of decision. She easily defended her unified welterweight titles. She's one of only, what, two or three now unified title holders in the world in boxing, male or female. And this was a record breaking defense. I believe 20 straight defenses. So it was a very, very impressive number. She faced a very
25, I think, right?
25, 26 was what stuck in my mind. It's in that.
It's Joe. I think was it
Joe
Lewis or
Lewis
something? Yeah.
territory.
Yeah, she beat Joe Lewis's record. It was truly amazing. She was up against a very solid Argentinian fighter, Victoria Bustos. She's rugged. She can take a punch. She took a lot of punches. She just got pummeled. No stoppage. It was a 2-minute round fight. I think if Brækhus could get to the 3-minute rounds, she'd have a little more success, but she's never been the biggest knockout artist. She has been a solid fundamentals boxer puncher her entire career. So not a huge surprise. She was never threatened. She was never in danger. She just took care of business. Whether that is the kind of thrilling fight that women need to make a splash, on the boxing scene against general fans and even knowledgeable fans, maybe not. But a good exposure for her, especially in Europe with European audiences where she's always been really popular. The big question now is, will she step it up? Will she take that fight everyone wants to see her make against Katie Taylor? And, what weight division will they fight? Will they have a catch weight? Katie Taylor's been fighting at lightweight, super lightweight. Brækhus is definitely at welterweight, solidly at welterweight. Eddie Hearn promises that's going to happen. DAZN promises that's going to happen in 2020. We'll see. Meanwhile, On the boxing Twitter, Clarissa Shields was saying, whoa, 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 ho, hello, well, over here. What about, wait a minute, what about me? She wants that fight badly, but they are very different sized women. I think that she'll need to let that go. If I'm Bracus or I'm advising her, I say, you do not want any of that. If she was in your weight division, that'd be one thing. Clarissa is so much bigger than Bracus. And as you can see from my avatar, I know exactly how Bracus sizes up. And Clarissa's a much, much bigger girl. That's just not happening. Katie Taylor,
Uh,
realistic fight.
Clarissa Shields. There's been an underswelling, and I may be leading the charge on this. Uh, there is a woman in and around your weight area. Uh, she just recently won a title, quote unquote. Her name is Raquel Miller. Um, People have been asking you about a fight with her, and your basic response was, well, let her win a world title, let her bring something to the table. Well, she recently done that. Won interim title at 154 pounds, a natural matchup, style mesh. The styles makes fights. So given the styles of both ladies, it would make a good competitive fight. It's a natural rivalry. Uh, I think it's one of you call yourself the woke. I understand why you want to fight breakers, but from 54 to 68 outside Franchon Cruz, Miller is the best fight, is the most competitive fight. You say you want to fight, you're willing to fight any and everybody. She brings something to the table now. Fight her. Quit worrying about brackets, a fighter you're so much bigger than. Fight someone closer to your own size who really wants to fight you. I'm just saying. Your thoughts, Jacob, on Brackett's fight against Bustos?
Not much more to add. I mean, we kind of thought that this would just be a pretty easy fight for Brackus, and she has the skills and to make it, to make the fight basically not competitive. Where she runs away with it in this particular case. But I mean, it's good that she's staying active. I do agree. She's at the end of her career, and I know she just signed that contract, but hopefully she can get some big fights. I do think that the Katie Taylor fight is really the big fight there. Um, I actually think she beats Katie Taylor. As good as good of skills as Katie Taylor has, I do see a lot of deficiencies with her. Um, Mainly, she gets hit a lot, and that she her gas tank can kind of weaken as the fight goes on. Um, so I think Baracus would beat her, pretty handily. That's just me, but yeah, the Clarissa Shields fight, that's like a way bully fight. Shields is way
Yeah,
bigger than
yeah,
Baracus, and I understand what Shields. Brackus is a big name. Brackus, to 26, breaking the record, 26 defenses. She's been a unified champion for a long time. She's been a champion for a long time. She has that name. So, kind of similar to kind of what Canelo does. He picks, the big names. Mayweather did the same thing. Like the names that are going to sell the fights, but is it really? I just don't see it being that competitive, and not really a level playing field in a way, because I think the weight disparity would be so big. So to your point, there's fighters out there that she can fight, and if I mean, she was supposed to fight, what was it, a few weeks ago, but that all that mess that happened, so I don't know, get your camp straight, stick to the fights that are in your division, and I think that will better serve you as your claim to greatness, which I do think she's and definitely in the talk of the pound for pound of the women fighters. But yeah, I mean, picking off lower division fighters, I don't think that's going to do anything for your legacy. That's just me.
Yeah, and in terms of a fight, a possible fight between Taylor and Brackus, uh, for me, Katie Taylor, her biggest weakness is that to me, she's not an inside fighter. Pearson beat her up and bullied her on the inside, while Brackus is not the physical, rough fighter that Pearson is. She's taller and bigger than Taylor, and to me, Katie Taylor is a mid-range fighter. Mid-range fighter. She's not a truly true outside fighter, and she's shown herself to not be much of an inside fighter. In the middle of the ring, she's really, really good where she can dictate things. She wouldn't be able to dictate things against Bregas, who has a terrific jab, who can still move, and who has terrific skills. She would make Taylor come forward, and I don't know if Taylor has the footwork to truly cut her off. And I don't know if Taylor has the power to hurt Breakers. To me, that spells trouble. So I tend to agree with you, Jacob. I think if they were to fight, uh, I would make Cecilia Breakers the favorite. I'd make her the favorite. Um, Move on to some other fights here, and I'm going back to you, Jacob, on this one. Going to talk the doubleheader card that took place on ESPN Plus. The headliner, Oscar Valdez fighting. Not he was supposed to fight Andres Gutierrez. Gutierrez, another issue, Gail. Fighters acting like they don't carry around a scale. 11 pounds over, Jacob. 11 pounds. I've never heard of that. I mean,
Disgraceful.
you thought we was. I mean, we were shocked when Neary was 5 pounds over his first title defense at bantamweight, caused him to get stripped against Yamanaka. 11 pounds. He fought
And
a substitute. Go ahead.
well, and here is the head scratcher. He was making all the weight milestones leading up to the fight. He made the 60, he made the 30, he made the 10-day weigh-in. He was at I believe 133 at the 10-day weigh-in. What the hell happened?
I don't
And
know.
why did he and his team not say something before he hopped on the scale? Really? He had no idea he was going to blow through like that. I mean, a pound here or there, I get it. It happens. I don't love it. Sometimes it truly is a mistake. It's a miscalibration on the scales that they're working on versus the official scale. It happens. Nobody should get too crazy about a pound. I mean, you know, if you're wearing a necklace and your skivvies, that's half of it. So you should be able to make it in an hour. A half pound's not a biggie.
Yeah, and I go.
There's not even a point in having a discussion at 141. And believe me, Gutierrez slit his throat for ever dealing with Top Rank again.
Indeed, and I go to you, Jacob. He fought. Valdez fought a guy by the name of Adam Lopez as a substitute. And here's my thing, Jacob. The more things change, the more things stay the same with Oscar Valdez. You thought with a new trainer, Reynoso, I believe, who trains Canelo Alvarez. You thought there would be some improvements defensively, but yes, Valdez won. He stopped him by seventh round stoppage. One, up until that point, Lopez was boxing his shoes off. Two, I have to say it, that stoppage was some BS. I know he got knocked down, and I know Valdez was going for the finish, but the young kid was fighting back. He was throwing punches back. He was clear headed, and then the referee just jumps in and just says, no more? What the hell?
So, just to speak on the first topic, Gutierrez, him and his team should not be able to. I think he should be banned for life for what he did. What he did was it's disrespectful and all to his opponent, to the sport, to his promoter, to the fans that paid money to see the fight. I mean, like you said before, I mean, I don't even like 6 pounds is still a lot for me, but you know, I don't like that. But 11 pounds is ridiculous. It's absolutely it's uncalled for, and it's just I don't know. Like I mean, they said it on the broadcast. There's probably going to be no promoter that's going to take a chance on this guy after that. So he's dead. But I would like there to be a ban or suspension to make this more serious, to put the message out there to people that if they do these kind of things, that they're not gonna be allowed to compete at the sport. Oh, looks like we might have lost Mike, but
Well, we could certainly talk
yeah,
about Jacob. I don't know if you've seen the replacement opponent, Adam Lopez, in Southern California. He's one of a lot of very good young fighters in the general Los Angeles area. There's a critical mass of just terrific sparring, great trainers. They all mix and match. I mean, and these young guys, Lopez is 23, they stay prepared, they're hungry. And to Lopez's credit, he normally fights at featherweight. He came up a weight
right.
to take this fight. He said, "Yep, I'm game. I'll do it. I'm ready. I've got this." And I was a little bit familiar with him, not a lot. What I was so impressed with were his fundamentals, particularly the way he moves himself around the ring, judges distance, and stays out of the way. You
And
know,
shout out to Buddy
oh,
McGirt. Outstanding work in the corner. Outstanding.
absolutely. Wow. I mean, he had that kid ready. There was at one point of the fight an overhead shot for several minutes during a round. Watching Lopez come in, score on Valdez, and neatly step off to the left every time, out of the way, out of range, never let himself be in position to be hit until Valdez just had to throw caution to the wind and come after him. What? Wow, that's a really impressive display. Again, from a 23-year-old prospect in with a world champion. And, Valdez won by the skin of his teeth with a little help from Russell Mora, the referee. Mora is generally a pretty good referee. He was the referee in the Canelo Kovalev fight, as you might remember. And I think all referees right now are very, very cautious about stoppages because we have had such a rough year. So, in his defense, I think the referees make the decision a lot more quickly than they normally do. But Lopez certainly could have made it 10 seconds to the end of the round. The 10-second warning had sounded when Mora stopped it. Now, I don't know whether Mora heard that or not. He may not have really had any perception how far along they were in the round. That does happen. So, yeah, the bottom line is yes, Valdez got the win, but his stock, in my opinion, went down. Lopez's stock went nothing but up. Have we ever talked about him on this show before? No. Have fans been talking about him before tonight or before Saturday? No, except for the hardcore who've seen him at club level fights in Los Angeles. That kid is now visible. He made it clear that he really needs to go back down to featherweight where he is going to get opportunities and they are well deserved.
I mean, my goodness, Jacob. It wasn't just the fact that he was moving around. 13 fights, yet he was fainting, making Valdez hesitate like a vet. I just can't speak enough of how impressed I was by the kid. And moving forward, Gail is absolutely right. At the very least, and Bob Era mentioned this after the fight, he's gained a bit of a fan base now, based on folks who were outraged about the conclusion. Two, this guy has talent. Go back down to featherweight. He got some fights there. He got some fights there that and some opponents that he can beat. He can do damage at 126 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, it was you know, this whole Gutierrez thing, was kind of one man's trash is another man's treasure, a situation, or an opportunity. One man's opportunity, becomes a missed opportunity, becomes somebody else's, and so he pounced on it. um they are, they were showing pictures of them, together, so they were familiar with each other. um you know uh in the boxing scene, when they were younger and up and coming. Yeah, the kid's very good. I mean, he has great foot movement. He kind of knows where to be, just outside of the range. He was prepared, I think, to show that he has the skills to compete at this level. He was coming up in weight, and I know he says he wants to move back down, to featherweight, I believe it is, but he also would like a rematch with Valdez, and I think at the very least he deserves that, because of how he performed, regardless of how the fight ended up. With Valdez, I think with Valdez we have a case of a guy that's just, he's spent so much time fighting a certain way that even with new trainers he just can't seem to adjust and be a different tiger. He is the tiger that he is, with the stripes that he has, and he's, with this is his third fight with the Reynosos, I believe, and he's still doing a lot of the same things that he's done in the past. It makes him an exciting fighter, and he's in exciting fights, but I don't know how long of a career this kid's gonna have, especially moving up to 130, which is becoming a very competitive division. And I actually think if they make that fight with Burchell, I think Burchell's gonna
Oh,
stomp him. I think
oh
Burchell is
God!
gonna
Did you see
stomp him.
how Burchell, how big he looked?
Oh, Burchell looks huge compared to him.
I
Burchelt
mean,
will kill him. Burchelt will kill anyone in the division. I mean, I really do think the
I
only
mean, it was,
who has a ghost of a chance, and only because of his style, is Herring. Because if Herring can box him and stay out of the line of fire, he has a chance. But certainly, Burchelt's he's the monster at 130 that nobody wants to take.
as
Nobody.
Wait,
far as
even Herring got caught though in his last fight. What was it, like the 11th round or whatever?
Yep.
So
yeah.
I mean, all it takes is for Burchell just to hit you that one. I mean, the way he blew out. I mean, Sosa's a very good fighter, and the way he blew out Sosa. I mean, I was there. It was he's a monster, and I just don't think that Valdez, after all the battles he's been in and him moving up in weight, this guy's gonna chew him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to quote Tim Bradley, during the fight, close your darn mouth when you're fighting about this. That's how you got this. How your jaw got broken the first time. Oh,
Well, yeah, that was Bradley was on fire.
he was all one.
Where was
He was
where
all
was
one
Teddy
last.
Atlas and the fire extinguisher? I mean, my God. When he hauled out the Thanksgiving dinner on the set, I thought Andre Ward was going to pass out.
But yeah, I have to agree with you. I have to agree with agree with everyone here.
But I mean, Adam
I
Lopez is
understand.
gonna get a bunch of opportunities because you even heard Bob Arum say it, like they weren't showing it. You couldn't hear the camera exactly, but you can see him talking in his ear and saying, "Hey, you're gonna get another shot." So he's gonna get on some more of these cards, and I think the stoppage, kind of to what Gail was saying before. I think you remember the day fight, I believe, was a top ranked fight, Buddy Gert, trained fighter, and it wasn't that long ago that happened. So these guys, these refs are in a bad situation in the sense that they don't want. I don't think that they're trying to you know not give these guys a chance, but they also don't want to have a tragedy on their hands. Because I mean, I'm not a referee, I'm not a trainer, and I'm not a boxer, so I don't know what that does to you mentally if you are involved in something like that and something goes awry, and you might feel some type of blame or responsibility that, oh, what if I had done this, or had I just done that. I do think he deserved to, to finish out the round. I mean, I still think that Valdez had him hurt enough where he was probably going to finish him.
I
Um,
don't. I don't. I thought he was going to survive. I
he
thought he was
looked
going to
he
survive the
looked.
round.
I mean, to me, I'm not saying he wouldn't survive the round, but he looked very hurt, and I think Valdez knew that he was losing the fight, and that and that's why, like Gail said, he was just kind of throwing out the window and just going after it, and throwing hard punches and just seeing if he can land to hurt him, because what was it, the seventh round already? I mean, it was getting late, so he was going to just come after him, and I don't think Valdez, for all his deficiencies, he is a pretty good finisher. So um, I but I mean, maybe they do a rematch, and we can see.
I'll bring Daniel into the discussion. Daniel has joined us. Daniel from the Inscriber. We're talking Oscar Valdez and his, far as I'm concerned, controversial stoppage win over Adam Lopez this past weekend. Your reaction to the fight, your thoughts on Valdez, who seems to still have issues defensively. He keeps getting hit flush. Um, and your reaction to the stoppage, was it too quick in your opinion?
To me, it was probably at the right time because I'd rather have it be a quick stoppage than a late stoppage. Because I'm with Jacob in that area. You never want to be in that situation where you think if I had stopped it a second sooner, maybe you wouldn't have a tragedy going involved. There's some, like I said, there's some instances where it's an early stoppage. This one's to me is probably the right time. And this was, I think, now this is third fight with the Reynosos.
Yeah.
And normally my rule is it takes three fights for you to get implemented to that trainer stop. The problem, unfortunately, is there are some things that no matter what you try to do, you can't unlearn from a fighter. And with Valdez, those are those issues. He wants to be an action fighter. So he will dismiss defensive in areas. Yeah, there have been some big improvements under Reynosos, but there's some things that you don't really unlearn unless you take a really, really bad beating. Maybe that's going to happen because, remember, they're trying to line him up for Burchell. And if that's the performance that I'm expecting from Oscar Valdez against like I said, a very, very, very late entry. We all know about the situation. We know what happened to his scheduled opponent, who apparently ate an entire Thanksgiving turkey before the weigh-in. We know that situation. If you can imagine that from the last minute opponent, you're going to have somebody like Miguel Burchell, who has power in both hands, was bad enough to the point that, remember, Rocky Martinez, they did everything possible to make sure that he avoided Burchell. So that speaks volumes to it. They got time. They have time to do it, but it's not looking good as far as that area when it comes to Valdez, especially with somebody like Burchell, who can hit you flush with both hands. You there, Mike?
Mike.
Mike, you there?
Can you guys hear me?
Now we
Yeah.
can. Something may be happening with Mike's.
The joy of live podcasting, everybody.
Yeah.
Daniel, do you want to talk about what was the first fight that we talked about, Gail? Tete?
Any
Oh, Mike.
response to the Tete Casimiro fight and what both of them should be moving forward?
2019 continues to live up to be one of the years of upsets. Because nobody expected that. when they came for Tete. Remember, we were thinking. Remember when they came to Tete, we were thinking about him in Inoue.
Yeah. He should go nowhere near that man. But Casimiro, he's all about it. And according to Inoue, if you believe his Twitter feed, he says he is too.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not sure that's the best idea given the beatdown he just went through
Testing,
hitting
testing.
past Donaire. And we do hear you, Michael.
I'm having some. Can you guys hear me first off?
I certainly can.
Yep. Oh man, actually, I want to. I know probably Mike probably first we're talking about it, but I do want to rehear your thoughts on the Tete thing. Because Tete was one of your favorite fighters.
And
Oh,
lost him.
well,
Michael, trust me, was leading the large group of serious boxing fans who were in complete shock, I'm sure, over the loss. But Tete really has to think carefully about where he wants to go from here. It's been a rough ride for him. And
Sorry,
whether
I had
he was
a mic issue.
rusty,
My bad.
Daniel would love to know, Michael, your thoughts on what happened to Tete.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
There is some
Days later,
honesty in a podcast.
I'm still trying to figure that out. I just don't know. Part of he got hit in a sensitive area, uh, but he didn't look great up until then. Um, that one boggles my mind, Daniel. Still trying to wrap my head around what I saw. To be honest with you, I can't give you a complete answer. To be honest,
that's been pretty much been the sentiment I've heard from all the boxers because everybody was just like, "What? What happened now?" Because I wasn't able to watch it live, but I was still keeping it up on Twitter, and I saw like, "Wait a minute, like, what happened?" Then I saw like, "Jesus Christ!" I literally went like, "Oh my god!" If that's the hit that took out Tete, maybe it was good luck that they didn't face it in the World Boxing Super Series.
indeed, indeed. To let's move on to previews to preview some fights here because a lot of fights coming up. I'm calling them.
No, Frampton or
Oh
what's
yeah,
that
we can
one?
talk about that quickly.
Uh,
Quickly. Carl Frampton and his win over Tyler McCreary. McCreary is not that experienced. That being said, I was impressed by Frampton, who was a smaller guy, but his experience and his guile to me proved to be the difference, as well as the body punching. Knocked McCreary down with body punches, savage lefts and right hooks to the liver. And McCreary, he was lucky to survive, really. But again, for those who want to talk about it, I like what I saw from Frampton, and it looks like moving forward, a fight with Jamel Herring in spring of 2020.
That to me is going to be an interesting fight because I did like what I see from Frampton, but it's going to be difficult to do when it's up. Well, he doesn't have to worry much about power with Herring after this, and he didn't have to worry much about this fight because he obviously he had much more versatile skill set and experience. The thing though is, remember, he's stepping in the division where you can live, where they're like we mentioned, like we talked about Burchell. We know this. We know there's a fight with Oscar Valdez that can be made, and should should a miracle happen, and Bob and Al actually start talking something beyond Wilder Fury, maybe Tank, maybe Santa Cruz. Again, to that third fight. I didn't like what I'm seeing, and when it came for Frank, but there's always that situation with Herring that he'll try to outbox you in many ways, and he's the naturally bigger guy, so it might present a bit situation with Frampton. In many ways, granted, that was more of a work rate area. How the second Santa Cruz fight went.
Uh, Gail Jacobs, any thoughts on Frampton's win over McCreary?
I mean, I thought the win, it was a solid win, and like Gail, I mean, like Daniel said, I think the Herring fight's an interesting fight. Um, it sounded like they were talking about, potentially if Valdez and Frampton won, that was another matchup that they can do, which I think would be better for Valdez than Burchelt. But Burchelt's
At
got to
this
eat.
point,
He got to
Valdez
eat
would be
too. So,
vulnerable. At this point,
so
Valdez would be vulnerable against just about anybody because of his defensive lapses.
No question. The most intriguing aspect of a Frampton and Herring fight is staging it in Belfast, which would be one hell of a party. And it's interesting, Top Rank has really owned St. Patrick's Day, just like Golden Boy has sort of traditionally owned the Cinco de Mayo boxing weekend. So there's talk about taking that fight to Belfast in March. It'd be a hell of a promotion, and there's a lot to like about that from the external factors. I think fans would travel. Heck, bringing all the Marines stationed in Europe right over there for the fight. It'd be a darn good atmosphere. But Herring, in theory, is the A side, so he'll have to think long and hard about that, whether that works for him, and agree to it. Because as fun as we might think it would be, there's a little bit of strategic thinking he needs to put in before he says yes.
Um, let's move on to talk about some fights here. A lot of fights to talk about, to preview, I should say. I may split some of these fights up before bringing everybody in on a couple of fights here and there. Um, let's go. Let's go the Showtime card. Uh, Showtime card that's going to happen on the weekend of the 7th as Jamal Charlo, full WBC middleweight champion now, fighting Dennis Hogan, who arguably beat Jaime Munguia. Jacob, how do you think he will fare against a Charlo? I, I, I personally think he will not find as much success against Charlo as he did against Munguia. Number one, uh, Charlo is a much more responsible fighter in terms of defense and discipline. Two, Charlo is such a big middleweight. Um, Even if Hogan were to find him with some shots, I don't think he can trouble him at all. Uh, in short, to me, Charlo, his jab is better than Munguia. He's naturally bigger than Munguia, stronger than Munguia. Uh, at 160 pounds, I just don't see Hogan giving him that difficult of a fight.
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Hogan for sure 100% won that fight against Mugia, and it was in Mugia's territory, so some home cooking there. I know that whole camp was upset, but I agree with you. I think Charlo, you know, he's not a perfect fighter, but he does have good power, and he has a great jab, and he has some good skills. And I just don't think that Hogan has the power to make Charlo respect him in that sense. And I think Charlo is going to have a lot of success, mid to later in the fight, with breaking down Hogan. All Charlo has to do is really land a good punch, and it could be night night. So um, I expect Charlo to win, but Hogan's a good fighter, and hopefully he comes in with a good game plan and makes it competitive. But I think Charlo will win this fight.
I'll let you handle this. You, Daniel and Gail, handle this next fight coming up on the undercard of Charlo and Hogan. Chris Eubank Jr. making his U.S. debut, fighting Mike Korobov for an interim world title. I think I want to say either WBA or IBF. I can't remember offhand. I'll look up the schedule. But anyway, Korobov gave Jamal Charlo a really tough fight not too long ago. I know Eubank Jr. is making his U.S. debut, and he's talking about he wants to fight Charlo and wants to come down the middleweight to rule the roost, if you will. But am I wrong thinking here that if he's not careful, Korobov is going to give him a whole lot more than he think that he it will not be an easy fight for Eubank Jr. I'll just put it that way.
Ladies
First
first,
Gil, and
girl.
then you.
Well, it really depends on what version of Eubank shows up. He can really stake out the joint um, if his head isn't right. Korbov is going to present, I think, a significant challenge um, to Eubank. This is no gimme fight. Um, the fight you're referring to was a year ago with Charlo. He's going to be Korobov. He's going to be right back at the same venue. Let's remember, um, Eubank's been out of the ring quite a while. It's been what 10 months since his fight with James DeGale.
Yeah, February.
A faded James DeGale, I would argue. And that wasn't exactly easy, although he won a unanimous decision. Um, you know, I do not think Eubanks Jr. has truly ever recovered from his fight with George Groves. I think that's in his head. He has the issue a lot of these second generation fighters do when their father has had a significant career ahead of them. They have a rough go. They not only have to perform well, they have to establish their own identity. There's this shadow that hangs over them, that name, all the time. We see that a lot. It is really rare. In fact, I would challenge somebody to name me a fighter who's surpassed a high achieving father in the ring. Funny enough, Adam Lopez may be on his way to being one of the few because he's the son of great Mexican champion and title contender Hector Lopez, which a lot of people didn't know. Um, so, if the betting line on Korobov is a good one, I'd pick him. I would pick him. I'm just not 100% sure how motivated Chris Eubank is.
I don't think it's a question of motivation. I think it's a question of just outright skill and ability. Korobov can box a bit. He showed that in the Charlo fight, and I've questioned how much Eubank has learned from a technical standpoint, going back to the fight with Billy Joe Saunders, and how much has he really learned? And it could be a situation with Korobov, who's going to be highly motivated. He said in the lead up, he's not going to let this opportunity pass. He's still bitter about the fight, the loss to Charlo. A motivated fighter who can box, who has a high will to win. I just think it's going to spell trouble for Eubank Jr. I just really do.
Oh, Chris Eubank. Word there's to say about it. He might have picked the worst opponent to do it and to make his USA debut. When you have a motivated Matt Korobov, who probably does feel like he should be in the main event, rematching Jamal instead of being on the undercard. And I don't think so much the Gross fight that bothers me when it comes to Eubank. Is the overall expectations that you have with Eubanks. Because he's been in a situation where he's never really met them. The expectations that people got because of his father. Which is going to be very, very bad news because his defensive lapses are very, very telling. And I just got to see if he throws more of those WWE style uppercuts Because you do that, Macro is going to hit you to the body, and that may be enough to do it. And I just,
Indeed, indeed.
I said,
Go ahead.
I just really hope that it doesn't become an embarrassment because as much as he irritates me, I legitimately feel bad for Eubanks Jr. because, like I said, the way the expectations that they have based on his dad.
Yeah, yeah. This fight is going to be for the interim WBA title, and this card is going to take place at Barclays. Going to move to uh, Mexico, Puebla, Mexico, to be specific. I'm going to you, Jacob. Um, Doubleheader on ESPN Plus. Emmanuel Navarrete against Francisco Horta. On the undercard, German Ancanyas is defending his junior bantamweight title against a fighter by the name of Gonzalez, Miguel Gonzalez. I look at both of these fights, particularly the Navarrete fight, Jacob, and this is a showcase fight, particularly for Navarrete, who's had a terrific year. Horter is unknown; he's untested, and based on what I've seen from him on video, you can hurt him. And if you show yourself to have not the greatest chin, someone like a Navarrete who has mega power at 122 pounds, to me that spells trouble.
Navarrete is in this situation where, or they got to feed the animals, and he's one of them. And so, Navarrete wants to eat. He wants to stay active, and he's the real deal. So, they're feeding him, people, to keep him active. And Horta, I think he just has the unfortunate task of having to go against this killer. Um, you know, every fight, I just see more and more of things to like about Navarrete, and what he does in the ring. And I don't know anything about Horta, but just looking at he was only fought in Mexico. His opposition hasn't been that great. He doesn't look like he has a lot of power. He doesn't have a lot of KOs to his name. A lot of decision victories. So yeah, I just think it's probably just going to be some. I don't know. Maybe he gets 2 rounds out of him. Who knows? I mean, Navarrete is again as a killer. So yeah, showcase for sure. But at least Navarrete stays active until he gets another big fight.
Yeah, Horta is a club fighter out of Cancun. He's getting a nice paycheck so he could spend some money at Christmas time. That's about it. You gotta love Navarrete though, man. He has fought 4 fights this year, 4 fights last year, 5 fights in 2017. I mean, he is just the Mexican Tasmanian devil. He is in motion and he's not going to stop. He, you know, rest. What for? I've been off for a few months. Let's go. I wish more guys had that attitude, and that's why people are coming up to him. They're getting a lot of good looks at him. He's enthusiastic. He's all about it. He doesn't play games. He doesn't give a shit who's standing across from him. It's just his attitude is let's go. And God bless him. I would love that to rub off on a few other guys.
Well, hell,
Now,
he's only 23 years old. What is he doing?
Oh
There's
well,
no need for
oh
him
wait,
to be idle.
oh
oh no,
he's the ripe old age of 24. I mean, he's going to turn 25 in January. Time's a wasting.
yeah, oh no. This is the best part.
I'm
This is the
sorry.
best part of it,
That's
Gail.
that's the way they used to do it.
Yeah,
That
that's
yes, he is very old school in that way. You're absolutely right.
the best
Go
part
ahead,
about this,
Daniel.
guys. No, the best part about it is he's a champion doing it. When at the time where champions try to take less fights, they would need to mention the yearly trek that is Gary Russell Jr. That
Yeah, and doesn't it put a guy, as good as Gary Russell is, doesn't it put him to shame when to hold up a guy like this? It really does.
Mhm.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So, and so, yeah, I applaud what he's doing. When you're young, and you're talented, stay active. That's how you get better. That's how you improve. That's how you stay sharp. So I'm all for it. Even though this is a fight he should win
Oh, he'll
and
blow
win
him out.
easily. Set
But
things up at get a spectacular win at the end of the year to set things up for 2020 because from the looks of it, it looks like there's some big plans for him next year.
and this is the way you build a fan base. You get him in front of people frequently. That's what's often lost on these guys who, wring their hands over the fights and oh, I might not really like this chance. Well, the problem becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they're too careful about who they fight because they're afraid they'll lose. What they lose is the fans because they get forgotten. And that can be almost as bad as a loss in the ring.
Right, exactly. Let's move on here. Um, let's move on to we talked about the let's move on to I guess we can say the big card, the big fights of the week, the big
Were
card
you
of
going
the
to talk
week.
about Encanhas? Encanhas?
I mean, if you want, I think it's going to be a similar situation.
I'm
And
just mad
Kahas,
that he didn't get his. He was supposed to be on the last card that I went to. He was supposed to be on the card, and they had to scrap him because of something. I think it was visa or something happened. I don't know
yeah,
what.
his opponent had visa issues, couldn't get a visa in time, but he's back in the ring. It may be some trouble here, some difficulty because he's fighting a Mexican fighter in Mexico, and you never know with Mexican fighters. Uh, they the talent pool is deep there, and it may be a case of a guy who's really unknown but really good. But based on what I've seen in terms of resume, Ancanas, he should win that as well. He should win that as well. Let's move on to. Um, I see in the chat, the private chat, uh, you mentioned the fight between Barboza and Adam Teixeira. Well, the Adam Teixeira fight. For anyone who wants to talk about that quickly, please do. I forgot to
It was a
mention that fight
it, it
in
was a
in the
banger.
recap.
It was a banger fight. Adamas is a prospect. He hadn't been knocked down. He's undefeated. And Teixeira had lost. He was on an undercard, Golden Boy undercard, when he Stevens knocked him out in like the second round. So we weren't sure if he was kind of used goods in the sense, but Adamas, he got caught by Teixeira. Teixeira had like two. He looked like Drago from Rocky Four. He had like cuts like below his eyes. It looks like he was crying blood, but his face was a mess. But it was a good back and forth fight. Teixeira stayed in the pocket a lot, and he eventually knocked down Adamas and hurt him. And Adamas, he was awarded the decision. Teixeira was. I actually thought Adamas he had banked a bunch of early rounds and won the fight, but it was a close fight, but it was a banger of a fight. And the Barboza fight, just this kid I've been seeing more and more of. He was on the Lomachenko Krola undercard, and I've seen him in a couple other undercards, but he seems like he's a real deal. He's one to kind of watch out for. He beat Mike Alvarado on that undercard fight, but this he beat a Brazilian guy by the name of Silva, who I've seen before, and he hit him with some vicious body shots, and eventually body shot that knocked him down. But I think he's going to be a good prospect to watch. I think he has like an NABF belt or something like that. Not a meaningful belt, but he's going up the ladder, and he's going to be looking for a chance at a real belt real soon.
Indeed. Thanks for that update. Let's move on to talk about the big card going to take place in Dubai. Uh, Rematch between Ruiz and Joshua. We all know what went down June of this year. Ruiz scoring the upset stoppage win over Anthony Joshua. We're going to talk about that fight last, but I want to get to some other fights on the undercard. Uh, I'm going to you, Daniel. Alexander Povetkin, he's going to fight Michael Hunter. WBA heavyweight eliminator. I know Povetkin is the name guy, but based on what I've seen from Hunter as he's moved up to the heavyweight, I think Hunter's going to beat Povetkin. Your thoughts?
It's not so much that Povetkin's the name; it's the experience that Povetkin has at heavyweight. But you're not gonna take that bad taste out of your mouth of, like I said, those failed testing in the Wilder fight when he had the best opportunity to win that title. And when you have somebody like Michael Hunter who has shown himself to be worthy of being a heavyweight in the discussion, you're gonna have a really interesting situation happening because say what you will about like Povetkin's skill set, we know that there's some fights that took it out of him. Like the Joshua fight took a lot out of him. And no amount of little victories that he gotten since then is going to take that away. And ultimately, what's going to wind up happening to me is I could see Michael Hunter doing a late stoppage, probably somewhere in the lines of the 8th or 9th round.
Also on this card, Jacob, you have Dillian White. We know the backstory with him and his issues being essentially frozen out of an opportunity, being frozen out, being ramrodded by the WBC. He's fighting Marius Wach. I keep mispronouncing his name. Wach. Uh,
Is it
in
Vok?
spite of Vach, there you go. In spite of my butchering of his name, your thoughts on this fight with between him and Dillian White?
I mean, Dillian White is the perennial bridesmaid. You know, he just can't seem to, you know, in as many fights as he wins, he just can't seem to get that second shot, or you know, he's just always kind of on the outside. But you know, it's good that he's back fighting. Again, he has one loss on his record. He's fought a plethora of you know top opponents, and you know, only losing to Joshua. So you know, I'd like to see him win this fight, and I think he will. Hopefully, he's stayed in shape, and you know, he's ready for this fight. You know, at heavyweights, you know, a lot can happen. You know, with the punch, you know, lands in the right place, but. You know, Vach is, you know, he's been around for a while. He's fought a lot of the guys, you know, names in the division, and you know, he hasn't really performed all that well against most of them. So I expect White to come away with the victory and hopefully be in the talks of, you know, the winners of the main event.
I'm also on this card, Gail Philip Hergovic. We've talked about him on the show before. I think you've spoken highly of him. He's fighting Eric Molina, 12-round contest. For me, it's just attitude. I like the attitude of the young, up and coming Hergovic. I don't like the attitude of Eric Molina. He's too passive to me, in my opinion. He doesn't have that umph. Uh, he doesn't give off the energy, the vibe of someone who's really, really motivated, who really has that want to. And based on that alone, I give Hergovich the advantage here.
Yeah, Hergovic. Hergovic is a up and coming heavyweight, uh, young, relatively young for this division. 27, Croatian born. Was an excellent amateur. He's only had 9 fights, but he's had 7 knockouts, and he's stayed very busy. He's knocked out, you know, for a guy with 9 fights, has had decent competition. Now he's going to step up, and that includes the likes of Amir Mansour, Kevin Johnson. So now he faces Eric Molina, a known name who does have, you know, 5 losses on his record. You know, this is a bit of a showcase fight on what's turning out to be sort of a big heavyweight showcase out of Saudi Arabia. Smart idea for Matchroom to put him on this card and let fans of heavyweight boxing in general, and a lot of casual fans who they know will be watching, starting to introduce them to some of the other players in the division on the card that they might not know. So Hrgovic has a lot of potential. He's also one of those guys. He fights a lot. This is only his third fight this year, but last year he had 5 fights and he made his pro debut in September 2017. So he could only get 2 fights in 2017. Again, a bit of a Navarrete type attitude, young, rising star, keep me busy, keep me out there. And he's very fan friendly. He's great with media. His English is decent. So there's a lot of potential for him to become the next big Eastern European star. I just have to go back, though, to Dillian White. What the hell happened with the last failed drug test? Did he get cleared? What the hell was that all about? How did Eddie Hearn sneak him back in on this card? This is completely to rehabilitate his image without any explanation as to what went on, at least not enough to satisfy me. And as much as I like Dillian White and as sympathetic as I was to him being put on the shelf all that time, man, he really blew it with me. Tested dirty, before his last fight. So, I'm not really having it on this card with him. I'm just not.
Wasn't there some controversy though because the B sample didn't
No,
test?
apparently Eddie Hearn just flat out dismissed and said the B test in this case is irrelevant.
Yeah, well, there, as you all know, I have some issues with the placement of this fight and a lot of the external political issues. And Hearn can get away with it. They're in Saudi Arabia. I mean, who the hell tests fighters in Saudi Arabia? I have no idea. It's we call it the wild, wild west. If it was in this hemisphere, it's the wild, wild Middle East. He's going to get away with it. He's doing it because he can. It doesn't mean fans have to like it. You just have to go along and pretend that what went down didn't go down. It did. I'm not forgetting it.
I think probably Eddie Hearn thinks about it because in a way, like Mike mentioned, how the WBC pretty much has frozen him out of the discussion with Wilder for the time being.
Well, if you don't know if he's a clean fighter, why would you take a chance? The WBC has engaged in plenty of, Daniel, your favorite F word in the past. But I give them credit. They do draw the line frequently when guys like White dirty things up. Now, I wish they'd been a little more stringent with their boy Canelo, but, I do give them credit when they deserve it.
It's called sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah.
Let's just be simple about it. That's what this is.
Yeah, absolutely. They're hiding it under the hijab. What can I say? I mean, they're gonna get him out there. Hopefully, he looks good. Fans that don't know a lot about what happened before, casuals that just know that they like heavyweights, will say, "Ooh, I like that guy." But
there's not even that. It's just done. If you want to do it low key, do what Bob Arum did. Remember, people forget that Dillian White was on an undercard for the Terence Crawford fight. Nobody knew until it actually happened.
Yeah, but Hearn wants to rehabilitate him with a bigger fan base, and he knows he's got this chance with people who don't follow the sport closely except for the heavyweights. So he's been smart. I will give him credit. He's loading up the card with additional heavyweight fights. Very, very smart, because that's what the fans on Saturday, outside of us, complete boxing heads, want to see.
And let's move on to save the best for last, if you will. The rematch between Ruiz and Joshua. Again, like I said, we know what went down in June. Ruiz, not well known to hardcore fans, but to mainstream media folks, he was looked at as the fat little doughboy who was supposed to be the sacrificial lamb to Anthony Joshua in his United States debut in Madison Square Garden. Well, he upset the apple cart Ruiz. Um, After getting knocked down, he got up, knocked down Joshua, took it to Joshua from that point on. From round four on, round three, four on, eventually stopped him in the seventh. And the question now is, um, how has Joshua, quote unquote, recovered from that disastrous effort in June? Fight is going to take place in Saudi Arabia, going to be aired on the zone. I'll just throw it out there to everybody here in the panel. Your thoughts on the rematch? Do you think Joshua will redeem himself? Do you think that this was more than a fluke in terms of Andy Ruiz? Uh, Talk to me about it. Anybody who wants to jump in first, I don't care.
Ladies first.
All right, stepping right up. Having seen a lot of Ruiz in Southern California and having thought, like many people, that he won the fight against Joseph Parker and should have an unblemished record, um, I thought he had a puncher's chance, a damn good puncher's chance, and shouldn't be counted out when he fought Ruiz as the substitute. And you can go back and look at my column in Communities Digital News. And while I did not call the fight for him outright, I said, do not dismiss him. No snickering about Andy Ruiz Jr. And by God, he did it. And am I have a lot of confidence in him that he can prove it wasn't a fluke. You know, if you go back and look at the history of a lot of rematches, you know, they don't often change. The big question in this fight is not Ruiz. I think we are going to see very much the same guy. He appears to have trained very seriously. He has dropped a little weight. I'm not always certain with guys like him that that's a necessarily a good idea, but as long as he isn't losing any power and it gives him more speed than he already has, he's easily the fastest heavyweight on wheels right now. In his hand speed for a big man is truly amazing. The question mark is not Ruiz. The question mark is Joshua. And again, where is Joshua's head at? Where's his head at? Did this rattle him so hard that he's going to go into that ring at all cautious, fearful? Is he going to be nervous about getting caught again? How does he change his approach with Ruiz? The smartest thing for him to do, unfortunately for all you fans out there, is to make it as boring a technical fight as he possibly can. Fight tall, fight distant, stay away from getting the bum's rush from Andy Ruiz. Nobody's going to love that, but that I think gives him the best chance, not only the best chance to win by making it a technical fight, but it also heals any doubts he's got in his mind. I think if he, for a minute, thought the only way to victory was to brawl with Ruiz, he'd be a goner for sure. I don't think we're going to see any one-punch knockouts on either side. I do think it's possible, again, both men go down at some point. Um, but if Ruiz does his job and can get to Joshua, he reacts a lot faster than Joshua does. His reflexes, his speed are his greatest friend. If he can catch him and do damage bit by bit along the way, I think what we'll see in this fight is a fight that goes a few more rounds and is a later stoppage, proving that Andy Ruiz wasn't a fluke the first time.
Gail mentioned that Ruiz is coming will come in uh, smaller than he was during the first fight. I'll go to you, Daniel. It's anticipated that Joshua will be slimmer as well. Given that backdrop, given the fact that Ruiz proved, just like he did in the Parker fight, that he has fast hands, and he's a guy that you really don't want to trade with in a sense. He has very good eyes within the midst of the exchange. He can find you with punches when you can't find him with punches, you know. Um, Very good inside fighting skills, if you will. He's not necessarily, yeah, he's very good in short distance fighting skills. I'll put it that way. Very good short distance fighting skills. Um, and he has the overwhelming experience factor over Joshua, meaning he began boxing at a much younger age than Joshua. Because of that, he knows the subtle nuances of the game more than Joshua does. I think he's a more comfortable fighter in the pocket than Joshua is. Giving all that which I detailed, your thoughts on this upcoming rematch?
It's very telling to me that Andrew Ruiz felt compelled to me to slim down in weight because one of the advantages is, and one of the reasons why Gail always mentions it, that it's something that's not good for somebody like that is because that way may also add to your sustaining power, your chin. Because we need to remember that Ruiz was a person that was knocked out first in that first fight. The issue, though, is the onus and the pressure is not on him. Remember, he's a champion, and everything is being put on Joshua right now because that's the story. Can he recover? Can we talk about it? If you hear everything, like there's talk about him slimming down, there's somebody put a rumor out there that if he loses, he's going to retire. So there's a lot of pressure placed on Joshua by itself, and I don't think he's ever been put in that type of situation before.
Excuse me for interrupting, Daniel. What do you think on this rumor that Joshua was hurt, was buzzed um, during sparring recently?
It is not surprising to me because that has been if you pay attention to rumors pretty much in every camp that Joshua's had, at least one or two of these stories always comes out where it's a situation where you always hear that maybe he's getting buzzed a little bit, maybe he's going to be in sparring. You've always heard it. So I'm not really surprised that you're hearing it now. The difference between this time around is all the other fights, like that's what I was mentioning, like he hasn't had this much pressure since the Klitschko fight. That the what's making it different now is the mere fact that you're coming off a loss. You're not coming off a loss on points. You're coming off a loss where it looked like you quit on the fight. And that raises, like I said, that raises a lot more questions. So when you hear this type of rumor that has been buzzed in camp, you start putting the things in his head that maybe he has not fully recovered physically or mentally from that loss. And that always spells a little bit of trouble, especially with somebody like Ruiz, who we know is going to have faster hands. Maybe him slimming down, he may have even faster hands. He is going to know the more nuances, like Gail mentioned, because he has a deeper amateur background. And most of all, he has the confidence now. Ruiz, one thing that impresses me when it comes to Ruiz is even in winning, he has humility. There's a lot of people in our champions that when they win the belt the first time, that confidence, especially in a win where they weren't expected to win, that confidence can turn to arrogance. And you're not seeing that from Ruiz. But you're seeing him more relaxed because at the end of the day, okay, if he wins, yeah, you say it's a fluke, but he had a good moment. if he wins, you know damn well he's going to be front row so February 22nd for Wilder Fury 2. And if Wilder pulls that off, Al Heyman's going to get all of that money, keep everything in house. The thing with Joshua is going to be the probably telling to me most of all when it comes to Joshua is how he's going to look in the first 3 rounds. Is he going to try to establish his jab? Is he going to try to do body combinations in the first 3 rounds, try to see if he can slow down a race just to reduce the speed advantage? If he doesn't do any of those things, if he tries to look for a knockout punch early, I know Gail said later rounds to probably see Ruiz winning. I would say if I don't see a jab, if I don't see body work from Joshua early, Ruiz could end it even faster this time around.
Your thoughts on the rematch, Jacob?
I'm gonna go against the group here. I think. I mean, Joshua was for all intents and purposes winning that fight prior to him getting caught, and I think I still think that Joshua has good skills. I'm not saying that Ruiz doesn't have good skills. You know, all the points duly noted on here. Um, but I think that you know the way that Joshua got caught, just in that spot, really messed him up. And we've seen him get hurt before. You know, he got hurt against Dillian White with a body punch. Saw him got knocked down and hurt pretty bad against Klitschko, and he was able to weather that and get out of those fights and win those fights. So I think if he has the right game plan and he uses his size and his distance well and looks for those shots and doesn't get too excited if he knocks down Reese or even hurts him, because I think that's where Reese is the most dangerous, is because of his hand speed. He can find those spots in between, and that's where he can catch you. And these are the big boys. These are heavyweights, and one punch can change a fight. So he needs to be patient. He needs to, stay behind his jab. Kind of like Gail was saying before, it might not be um, an exciting, fight like everybody was talking about the first time, where it was like the round of the year because guy gets knocked down, gets up, and knocks the other guy down. But the name of the game is to win. Is to win the fight. Um, so if he can do that, if he can do these things that I think he's capable of doing, and I think he's also dropped some of his muscle mass, which have known to tire him later in the fight. Because you carry all that muscle, your hands get tired, and it's hard to do. Um, and so I think he can. Um, I think he could pull this off. So I could see a decision win for Joshua if he can make it to the 12th.
Okay, so we got Gail going for Ruiz by late round stoppage. What's your official prediction, Daniel?
My official prediction will be Ruiz on points.
Ruiz on points. Jacob, you got Joshua by decision. Okay. My thoughts. I'm hesitantly going with Joshua to win by decision in a boring fight. Um, I think a slim down Joshua will keep the fight on the outside. I think he will do his best to establish the jab, try to pot shot Ruiz. He's not going to stay around in one spot and leave himself vulnerable. He's going to have to be very good aerobic shape, I believe. Um, but he's going to fight scared, to be honest, in large parts. And I think he may hold a lot. so Ruiz will not be able to get off with punches up close. And because of that, he will be able to smother what Ruiz does. He would do that just enough to neutralize and frustrate Ruiz. It's going to be dangerous for him throughout because the chin problems, they're legit now. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows that we talked about the Dillian White fight. We talked about how he got knocked down against Klitschko. Hell, there were parts in the Joseph Parker fight where I felt he buzzed him. And even Povetkin got his attention with shots. And we know what happened in the previous fight, Ruiz. So everybody knows that you can clip Joshua on the chin, you can hurt him. I think Ruiz may make the mistake of trying to go for a knockout, may get out of his game plan. That may play into Joshua's advantage. But overall, I think Joshua is going to find a way to eke out a decision in a boring, frustrating manner. People will criticize him, I think, afterwards, but Joshua's not going to care because in the end, I think he's going to regain, excuse me, those heavyweight belts. Last word from anyone before we start to shut things down?
I just want to say, for as far as the chin check, I think there's a big distinction between somebody that can't take a punch and when you get up to these heavier weights. I mean, when these guys are massive. So, the heavyweights of this day, of this modern day, these guys are massive. And so when they throw a punch, if they throw a good punch, it's gonna knock a fucking elephant out. Like, I mean, it's with all that power behind it and the body behind it. It I don't think that necessarily means that someone has chin problems. Because he hasn't been knocked like out cold. I mean, but he's been hurt and he's been knocked down. And I think every single fighter in the heavyweight division has been hurt at some point. Deontay Wilder has been hurt. Ortiz, Fury, all of them have been hurt. I don't think there's one guy that hasn't been in some type of state. When you're talking about the big boys.
It's not only that. The main thing about it is everybody's been chin checked. The main thing about it what makes the Joshua case probably much of the focus is on it is there's enough backstory around it where you feel that there's always a sense of vulnerability when it comes to it. And that sort of attracts people to Joshua. There's a sense of vulnerability to it, but you can tell he can pull through. Luckily for him, he has not reached David Price territory yet.
And I think another key, excuse me for interrupt. I think another key is he knocked him down. Joshua knocked Ruiz down, but Ruiz was clear-headed when he got up. When Ruiz hit Joshua, Joshua got hurt and stayed hurt. I think for Joshua to win this rematch, he has to at some point not just put him on the deck, but truly, truly get Ruiz's respect, where he make him think twice about coming in, where he makes him hesitant. He does that, that gives him a greater shot to win.
Exactly. That's the main thing about it. When it gets a bit of chance, and that's what makes this fight interesting. Ruiz now has the confidence, to me, and we have to mention it. Like Klitschko, the main flaw is he didn't have the confidence where he thought he would finish it at the end, and that cost him ultimately. But you saw Joshua didn't exactly have a chance when it came to recovering that well because Ruiz didn't let him. So that's going to be very telling, the whole story of chin checking, because Jacob's right. Like every major heavyweight at some point has been tested in this era. And interesting enough, I mentioned the one that everybody thinks should be an easy knockout is the one that's probably has had the better chin out of a lot of the heavyweights, and that's Deontay Wilder.
And he didn't get hit on the chin though. Remember, he got hit behind like the ear, which is the equilibrium. So I think there's a lot to be said with when you get hit in that place, that'll mess up anybody. So it might just be. I'm not saying it's a luck. It was a well placed punch, but getting hit on the chin and getting hit on your equilibrium and not being able to balance and have that'll mess you up. And the fact that he's gone through that, at least he's experienced that now, and hopefully he can do a little bit better to protect himself. But
Yeah, I hear everybody's points here, and I think we're going to shut the show down on that note. Going to go around the panel here. Always begin the show starting with ladies first. Going to end the show starting with ladies first. Once again, Gail from Communities Digital News. For those who want to talk to Sweet Science, for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media on the side. Um, for those who want to talk small business advice, let the folks know where they can find you.
You can find me and my regular column at Communities Digital News, and that is COMM, Digi, DIGI News.com. On social, it is PR Pro San Diego. And don't forget, everybody, this fight will be on DAZN very early in the United States, an early afternoon start to the card. You'll see all of the heavyweight fights we discussed tonight before the main event, which should go off, I'm imagining, 4 or 5 ish Eastern time, 2 o'clock Pacific. So don't make any big plans early on Saturday.
Going to you, Daniel. Daniel from the Inscriber. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat, they've had a very good start to the season. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter, Ruckus99. It's been a rough couple of months, unfortunately, but I'm finally ready now to start things off with going faster for boxings.com. We're definitely going to get the podcast up and running again, and definitely going to reach out next week because it's almost the end of the year. I can't believe it's already December. But
Yeah, no, right?
Yeah, and we're definitely going to have to look into start thinking about things at the end of the year because there's a lot to talk about. It's been a year of upsets, and especially when you think about the biggest upset probably to me is Golden Boy actually letting somebody else take next Independence Day weekend this year.
Hmm. Last but certainly not least, Jacob from Japanese Boxing. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk movies and television and film, because you do appear from time to time on the Wrong Reel TV and film podcast. Let the folks know where they can find you.
yeah, thanks for having me on the show, and like always, thanks to the esteemed panel. And a shout out to our friends of the show, Gus, Bo, Joe and Francis. Hope everybody's doing
And
well.
let me just say this publicly here. Big shout out to Bo. Uh, he has some family issues that he had to deal with over the Thanksgiving break regarding his mother. Everything seems fine now, but I want to give a shout out to the brother Bo from Truth and Facts Sports as well as Three Kings Boxing. Just had to get that word in. Continue on, Jacob.
No, good. Yeah, I hope everything's going away, okay with him, and like with everybody. We're kind of like a little mini family here. This is our
And a shout
Thanksgiving.
out to Gus as well. Shout out to Gus as well.
Our Thanksgiving is talking boxing, like normal. But yeah, I could be found on Twitter, JRATM23. And yeah, you check out I tweet out a lot about the film podcasts and stuff. So you can just go to my timeline and you can see all the episodes that I tweet out that I'm not even on, but if you're into movies and stuff, and if you're, I'm debating whether I'm going to go to this fight in December. That's going to be in Ontario. So I got to talk to my friend Gail over here and see if she can convince me to go. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to go.
um, for those who want to talk boxing or music or fitness with yours truly, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. As I said at the beginning of this episode, If you want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, please check out the blog page, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. Top right of the blog page, you'll find links to where to find us all over social media, where to find us on most platforms that carry RSS feed, where you can donate, Cash Me and PayPal, and also the link to my fitness page. Let's Build Together December Challenge starts this evening. Gail and Daniel, you will get emails about that. Um, Again, if you're interested in some fun, challenging uh, 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 workouts, fitness challenges, anything related to Beachbody, be it the programs or be it the supplements, just hit me up on the Pound for Pound Master Report blog page where you will find my Beachbody online uh, the link to my Beachbody online fitness page. On the next, and last but certainly not least, if you like what you heard this evening, please hit that like button on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Um, Hit that like button and subscribe button on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, Google Podcast. We're all over. Next episode, we will recap all the boxing that's taking place on the weekend of the 7th. The the Ruiz Joshua card, excuse me. The card on Showtime with Charlo and Hogan, Eubank Jr. and Korobov. The card in Mexico with Navarrete, Horta, Ancañas, Miguel Gonzalez. Uh, we may talk David Lemieux. I'm not sure. We would recap all of those fights, and we would do a preview of Terrence Crawford, who's finally making his return to the ring against his mandatory on the undercard of that highly anticipated lightweight showdown between Richard Comey and Teofimo Lopez. IBF lightweight strap is on the line. One of Gail's favorite fighters, Virgil Ortiz Jr., um, really, really talented welterweight. He's fighting on the 13th in Indio. Card is going to take place on the zone. We will preview all of those fights. So yeah, a lot of boxing to talk about next week. For Gail from Communities Digital News, Daniel from the Inscriber, Jacob from Jab Hook. I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 270. This has been episode 274 of Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.